The big question, would this not just inflate the AI bubble?
Oh, well, I mean, that's a great question. It is super incestuous. Yes, it does it does feel like one does need the other. Um,
Today I'm joined by Natasha Bernal, a senior business editor at Wired. Thank you for joining me on the Tech Report today.
Hi, thank you for having me, Isaac.
So there's a good range of stuff I want to talk about today, but let's start with the investment of $100 billion by Nvidia into OpenAI. So many billions of dollars are thrown around in the AI industry. What will this really be buying? What does this really mean?
Yeah, so a lot of billions, as you were just saying, definitely throwing around. A lot of them by Nvidia lately. They seem to be having sort of a hole in the pocket, kind of, burning through cash at the moment, which is really interesting to see. So Nvidia says that it will supply high performance chips, which is needed for the processing power required by OpenAI. The deal would involve OpenAI adding about 10 gigawatts of computing capacity, which is sounds really good. It's been described as a strategic partnership by Nvidia, and it shows how aligned these two companies are at the moment. And it obviously comes amid, as I kind of alluded to at the beginning, a kind of high profile investments by the company into other things. What exactly Nvidia is getting from OpenAI is super unclear, and I would point our viewers to an excellent FT Alphaville post in which they asked a load of questions about things that we don't know and just sort of answered don't know to all of them because there's not many details on like what OpenAI is giving in exchange. Obviously, this is not a situation where they have to necessarily disclose things at the moment. Um, so we don't know. There's so many things we don't know about this deal.
There's been some criticism of a bit of a not a circular economy is not quite the right term, but obviously Nvidia is investing in OpenAI to help OpenAI purchase Nvidia products to then make these data centers and increase capacity. The big question, would this not just inflate the AI bubble?
Oh, well, I mean, that's a great question. It is super incestuous. Yes, it does feel like one does need the other. And we can't forget at the moment the sort of situation that we're living in the world of AI, where you've got China on the one side and the US on the other. And it does feel like Nvidia in particular has been caught in between those two big superpowers because, as you know, recently China banned anyone from buying the AI chips from Nvidia in China. So, and Jensen Huang, let's not forget, the CEO of Nvidia, accompanied Donald Trump on his state visit to the UK, and was there in his coattails and glorious, spectacular leather at the state dinner. So his relationship with the US is closer, which means that by default he would be closer to Sam Altman and OpenAI. It makes sense for that symbiosis to be occurring in the sector, just to allow it to accelerate and grow ahead of its rivals in China. Now, I have to say that Jensen Huang has been very open with the fact that he would like China and the US to collaborate together and that he would be very open to continue doing businesses there as well. So I don't think that that door is closed necessarily, but you can see definitely an alignment between those two businesses. And we've seen again, another example of this is Nvidia's investment in Intel, which was again announced this week. Intel, which was in trouble, President Trump making some comments about its CEO that were kind of putting in question the legitimacy of his title. This big injection of cash is obviously a huge lifeline, a really good thing for Intel. Still not clear there on what Nvidia is getting out of it. So really keen for that to come to light. I expect it will probably be in the next earnings.
I mean, a couple of points I want to touch on there. Like, is China banning the purchase of Nvidia chips? I mean, it's obviously it's a loss of potential, but only recently they lifted the restrictions on selling chips to China in the first place, or the good chips to China in the first place. So is this really any different from what was happening before? Which is also the question I would ask about Nvidia and OpenAI, because they've had a very, very close relationship, if not symbiotic, in Nvidia's rise in valuation. If OpenAI's ChatGPT hadn't taken the world by storm.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I think this situation with China is certainly an evolution of what we've already seen, right? I think first there were preoccupations from the US government about the security side of Nvidia chips. Then those were sort of resolved, it appears, and then those same questions were reflected by the Chinese government asking, are these chips a question of national security as well? So it does feel that there is certainly an evolution in which we can see sort of an ebb and flow of Nvidia being a bit closer to the Western side and the US government at the moment versus China. It does feel with OpenAI, I mean, in order to progress along the lines that it wants to go and grow its hegemony within AI and Gen AI specifically, it needs chips. So it does make sense for it to partner with a chips business. For Nvidia, I mean, if I had to have a stab at what I feel gets out of it is it's establishing itself as a key partner with growing smaller businesses within that space who will then have an established relationship with Nvidia moving forwards as they grow. So it's sort of setting those foundations of being incredibly relevant and incredibly important in the ecosystem as those businesses grow themselves. So I feel a really savvy move. I mean, if you look at how all these companies are interwoven, you've got OpenAI and Apple. You've got access to different businesses, and all of them are kind of tied together in this sort of strange kind of family tree.
And so you mentioned as well the investment of wider investments of Nvidia, for example. The one that comes to mind most recently is the Tech Prosperity deal, which I think was $43 billion investment in the essentially UK's technology AI infrastructure by predominantly American companies. What are the most significant takeaways of this deal? What is America getting out of it?
Yeah, so this was all announced when Donald Trump was over here on a state visit. The majority of this investment, as you say, comes from private companies. It was mainly from Microsoft, which was, I think, up to $30 billion. And Nvidia itself was sort of around or up to $15 billion. And the majority of it's going towards AI infrastructure. The UK is a really attractive place for AI infrastructure, especially for data centers. It's the biggest market outside of the US for that. And the idea is that this will help to power the building of new data centers, especially those that help to power AI, and also to dedicate some of that to R&D, quantum and supercomputers, which are all kind of, I know, totally buzzwords for everyone who's been watching, but areas of great potential and great growth for these businesses. And they're really interested in what, especially the R&D side of the UK can offer. They're always talking about how incredibly talented the academic minds are that are coming out of the AI space in the UK, especially out of our universities, and wanting to tap into that was a huge part of this deal. It feels like they want to take the opportunity to, I suppose, take advantage of the climate that the UK government has put forward, saying that they really want people to invest here. So they'll kind of potentially push down all the barriers for them to do all the things that they'd like to do in the UK. So a lot of people that I've spoken to were concerned about what the UK might be giving in exchange for this deal. They're wondering, where are all these data centers going to be built? Why is it that local people's concerns aren't being listened to? All these questions are kind of unanswered because we don't have the full text of the deal in front of us yet. But it is clear that, Keir Starmer's government is very pro-AI. They consider it critical infrastructure, and they really want this to happen. Jensen Huang, who was in London during the state visit, told me that the main motivation for him to want to invest in the UK was because Keir Starmer asked people to. So whether that is 100% true or not, I can definitely see that there is a great opportunity for businesses here who want things to happen quickly to know that the government will be on their side and kind of pushing away all those obstacles to make it happen.
It's interesting that it was Starmer essentially requesting the investment that got the investment, because I was sort of, without that information, seeing this potential, like almost like a hostile, not a hostile takeover, but like a merger of America's tech industry, essentially seeing some good talent in the UK's tech industry and AI industry, and thinking, well, if we just eat that, then we get to have the benefit of that and build on top of it.
And that's something that critics have reflected. Like they've said, this all in the end, they were talking about digital sovereignty and having sovereign AI. That was part of the messaging, especially from OpenAI and Nvidia when it came to investing in the UK. And people were saying, well, how can it be sovereign AI if it's funded by US businesses? And that is a good point. You've got a situation where they're bankrolling a lot of these big investments, and it does align very well with what President Trump has wanted, which is, to expand the influence of US tech abroad and make it like the global international standard. And when you think about these investments, again, it's not 100% clear what these businesses are getting in exchange for their investments. A lot of people who are critical of these moves are saying, they're accessing our data, they're accessing our infrastructure, they're growing their footprints, and they're inserting themselves into an ecosystem that is prime for development. And this is one thing that I think is quite unique about the UK, because it is true that Prime Minister Starmer has been saying that he wants AI investment for a long, long time, and it's been on the minds of many people, going like, why, if we have such amazing talent and such great minds, have we not got a market for AI and quantum that would rival those of any other country in the world? And I guess that's still a question in people's minds. Why can't we just do it ourselves? If you're so pro sovereign AI, why do we need you? So I guess all these things, again, once we have the text of the deal, which I'm not sure when that might be made public, we might be able to see what they're getting in exchange. Obviously, these businesses, again, are super interested in like removing regulation, and they don't like to be, it's sort of subject to different rules in different jurisdictions. So we might see some changes and some exchanges from the UK as a result of this investment. What those might be, I'm not sure.
And moving on to the sort of the fears that are growing around AI job cuts or AI fueling job cuts, should I say. Sam Altman has made some predictions on some areas that would be seeing hits, like customer service, and programmers should also watch out. But something that I've seen a lot of is white collar jobs are increasingly at risk for word processing things and accounting and these sorts of things. And we're even seeing it in the legal fields, where people are now being fined for using AI, which then creates legal precedent which doesn't exist. Is this fear mongering, or we've seen some cutbacks in companies like Intel and Microsoft, but how much of this is really going to be affecting customer service people and programmers in the short term?
It depends on who you ask. If you ask Sam Altman, obviously he was saying this latest commentary was on right-wing commentator Tucker Carlson's podcast, where he said it's going to be a punctuated equilibrium moment where a lot of these changes will happen in a very short period of time. Now, we've heard that from various different people, and we've seen some action from businesses. We've seen hundreds of thousands of jobs being cut, and automation and AI was given as a reason to people for those cuts happening. However, we're seeing that some of those jobs come back. The level of automation and the efficiency of automation is not the same. You can say that you want to cut jobs in order to fund automation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the automation that you achieve is at the par of someone's job. It is true, and I feel like a lot of people would echo Sam Altman in saying that jobs that have a lot of repetitions in them, jobs that require a lot of kind of decision making that is continuous and kind of similar, is more at risk of automation, because you can teach an LLM to do that for you, or you can teach a chatbot to do that for you. But that doesn't mean that all roles will be gone. I mean, I've seen so many different predictions, even in the last 10 years certainly, but the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, first it was HR, then it was lawyers, then it was paralegals, and you see around you in the job market, there are still jobs for those roles. So I feel it is kind of not a binary situation where suddenly everyone who is doing these jobs are going to find that their jobs are just gone, and they're never going to be able to do them again. There are businesses who are trying out stuff, sure, and they're cutting jobs, but those jobs still exist. So I think it's going to be a while until we see the kind of changes that Sam Altman has been predicting. He did also say that, from his view, roles that require human empathy, such as nursing and healthcare providers, are less likely to be automated. And I personally would argue that customer service, which I've worked in before, requires a lot of human empathy. So I would say that, let's not, discount that role just yet.
There's an interesting a job which I don't think anybody quite would have expected would be taken by AI is a government minister in Albania, where the Prime Minister of Albania appointed an AI called, I might say this wrong, but Diela, who is going to be overseeing public procurement and helping to combat corruption. It is as it feels as odd as it sounds, I think. But what problems do you see coming with this?
Yeah, obviously Albania has quite a long history of issues with corruption, and I guess what they're trying to do with this AI minister is to kind of almost put a barrier in between themselves and any kind of complaints and issues to that regard, and say, okay, if the AI makes the decision, it's completely objective, and we must respect what the AI says, and it's not us, we swear, it's the AI that says no or yes, and there you go. But I guess just from a purely pragmatic perspective, it's very difficult for that to work well, because AIs are based off of training data, which means that somebody at some point has made decisions, and it doesn't feel like necessarily having an AI minister is the best way to go about claiming that you are completely impartial on decisions about procurement or anything else. It was interesting this week, there was some footage that came out of the Albanian parliament, where the AI minister had made its first, I suppose, appearance, where people were throwing rubbish because they were so upset about this appointment. So clearly some internal strife within the democracy in that country, with people feeling some sort of way about it. But I think it's interesting. I don't know if you've like taken a really close look at this, or if your viewers have, but if you look at the AI, the way that it's portrayed in sort of physical form as an image is also, I don't know, I felt a bit strange about it myself, and I'm not sure how you guys feel, but certainly it's portrayed as a woman with sort of very kind of traditional clothing, and while I understand that psychologically there have been studies that portraying AI as female mean that they're more approachable and that people find women more trustworthy, in some aspects, in some studies, it's not necessarily the way I would have expected them to necessarily need to portray something, and it was odd that it was in traditional garb, if you see what I mean. I didn't really necessarily understand why it needed to take that form. I suppose you can't put Clippy like as like a prime minister or
Yeah,
like something like that.
yeah.
Like maybe people would like that even less. But yeah, I found that it was just a bit a kind of a trope almost of like having a woman as the face of it when it's AI, and people complaining about it and throwing rubbish and stuff when it's sort of an AI that's been portrayed as a woman. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't really love that, to be honest.
Yeah, aside from the ethical problems that it raises, is AI at a point that it could even be used in the tasks in purely the what it would need to be doing? Is it even capable of doing those things yet?
Well, we've done a lot of reporting on algorithmic decision making at Wired, and it is interesting when it's used in sort of a governmental social space. We did a few investigations a couple of years ago about that. It was being used primarily in the benefits system, and it was making decisions that were frankly wrong, where you had sort of people who were determined to, because of their postcode, because of how they filled out forms, to not need help, and it was very difficult to argue against what the AI, or rather what the LLM had decided, because it was deemed to be so objective. And so, do I feel that AI can do a better job than people? No, but I do understand that if you are in a situation where if you are dealing with a lot of corruption and perhaps retaliation if you make the wrong decision or you don't approve certain things, I could get why you might want to put an AI in front and be like, no, no, it's the AI, it's not me. Whether that works or not, I don't know. I think it would be very interesting to see what comes out of Albania. There have been people in the past who've tried to, I think there was a UK MP, correct me if I'm wrong, who tried to turn himself into an AI.
I've not heard about this, I must admit.
Yeah, it was Labour Party's Mark Stewards. He worked along a startup AI to create a virtual representation of himself to allow his constituents to talk to him. So look, I mean, it's not unprecedented to get someone who might enjoy talking to an AI more than to their member of parliament. I don't know.
Fair enough. It's a long walk to essentially just put a chatbot in between yourself and your constituents in British politics, but I guess maybe their heart was in the right place with it, as I'm sure it is in Albania. But would there ever be a right time for, aside from AI being used to support governance, but AI to be involved essentially in the governance? But there was very recently an announcement. Seems relatively obvious to those sort of interested in this field that hallucinations are a mathematical inevitability rather than sort of a bug or an issue with AI. It's just something that will happen with the technology that we're using. So surely that would rule out using it in any way that it then is taking decisions that affect large amounts of people's lives. Surely.
I mean, I would be very intrigued to know how much people are using, people in positions of power are using AI to help with their research, because it's not just about decision making, it's also about what informs your decisions, right? If you are used to using LLMs and especially generative AI, to bounce ideas off of, or look for research points, or even potentially write your speeches. That's something that perhaps might seem innocuous, but actually will help to shape the way that you think and the way you're portraying yourself to people, which is super important when it comes to sort of being in public office. I do think that perhaps it's used a lot more than we know. It wouldn't surprise me if people are using it as a shortcut to be able to kind of find a lot of stuff very quickly, or to kind of help to make sure that their idea is a good one, or to consolidate bits of data. I think that's going to become more normalized. Whether someone in a position of power, and I know Sam Altman has said in the past, he was in the US actually. He was in a US trip to Washington DC. I think it was in July, where he said to I think it was the Federal Reserve or some body like that. He was saying, "Oh, I think there'll come a time when presidents will be consulting ChatGPT," and honestly, I don't know if that time's here. No one's really publicly saying, "Oh yeah, ChatGPT says though that this and that." It's not seen as a credible, as because of its hallucinatory nature. No generative AI is at the stage where hallucinations are not a big factor of authenticity of its sourcing material, and you cannot use it as your number one source or only source of information. It's not prudent to do that. And you're right. I mean, hallucinations are not going to go away. They will get hopefully less frequent, but as more people use them, this technology is being stress tested in a way that perhaps is unprecedented for any kind of technology. You've got suddenly it's accessing the whole world, and that's a huge test for any kind of tech. And it's very difficult for people to not find the flaws in it because there's just so many people using it.
From flaws in one type of tech to flaws in another type of tech, that's quite a neat segue. Zuckerberg had quite a disastrous launch of his Meta, his AI infused glasses, and also the neural band that I think went along with it. It seems to be challenging Meta's position as a leader in tech development, as the AI sector has been, well, under tumultuous times, is I think the way to put it, and now Zuckerberg's vision of an AR VR future that we're all living in is also failed on a live test. Is Meta losing its prowess as a tech leadership and just is a really, really successful social media business instead?
That's a really tough one because a lot of things go wrong at live demos. So I have to give like the benefit of the doubt. Like so many things can go wrong on a stage. So like on this occasion, it was the live keynote address at the company's Connect developer conference last week, and yeah, Mark Zuckerberg basically just made a classic mistake. I think he tossed to a demo of the new smart glasses that he just announced. The demo immediately went wrong. They brought a chef on stage to ask the Meta Glasses voice assistant to walk him through a recipe. So he said, "Hey Meta," which is the activating command for the glasses, and every pair of Meta glasses in the room, hundreds, because they distributed them to the audience, just suddenly started chattering. And then Meta CTO Andy Bosworth posted an Instagram reel after the event because his own bit on stage also went wrong. And he said that the reason for this hiccup was because there were so many instances of Meta's AI running in the same place that they had inadvertently DDoSed themselves. so, um, so but then they tried to do a video call demo and that also failed, and the demos that didn't fail were kind of filled with lags and interruptions. And my colleague Boone Ashworth was there, and he tried on the Meta glasses, and I think, I mean, they're priced at $799. It's not cheap. It's been pitched as sort of a breakthrough in wearable agentic AI with assistants that will help users. Uh, he says, and I have to trust him on this because I haven't tried them myself, that they are still the best glasses, smart glasses that you can get right now, right? They are more fashionable than the Google Glass, he argues, and the partnership with Ray-Ban and Oakley owner EssilorLuxottica has really worked quite nicely. So they look like normal glasses. They're passable as normal glasses. But he has said that if you start adding on all of the cognition capabilities, they look, and he's described them as like big, chunky, dorky, and it's no, there's no getting past that. And the thing is, when you're using them in the wild, it's hard to get past that like 1,000 yard stare that people kind of have when they're trying to engage with the assistant rather than look through the glasses like a normal person. And I think like with these, I mean, my analysis is if you like smart glasses and you're into this sort of thing and you find it useful, they're not bad. If you, but if you want to use them, maybe don't use them in front of like hundreds of other people that are wearing them. Like that would be my best advice. Like just use them on your own and then you'll be fine. But yeah, it's tricky, right? This is an evolving technology, and it does feel like there is great opportunity there, and that seems to be where Meta's focusing at the moment.
It does just raise the case of having a personalized trigger to use your AI assistant, sort of like I don't want to say it, but a safe word, so that you can start your AI in a way that nobody else might.
That's a good idea. Yeah, people should definitely think about that.
Yeah, but it's also, I was going to ask, it was blaming Wi-Fi a fair reason to explain the faults that happened at the show, but I hadn't heard that actually. Of course, he'd said, "Hey Meta," and all of them had shot up and they DDoSed themselves. So blaming the Wi-Fi, a little bit simplistic, but is a fair point to make.
Yes, I mean, I guess the probably same thing would happen if you had like loads of smart speakers in the same place, etc. And I get how that could occur. I mean, you would think that a business that is as big and sophisticated as Meta would maybe have done some trials where they had a bunch of smart glasses in the same place and see what happens when they activate one. But I mean, maybe it's food for thought for their next product development. Who's to know?
Well, Natasha Bernal, thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you.